Hey, boy. Oh, Struth. Boxer. Come on. Go on, go on. Fetch! Boxer. Oh, what's that then, Boxer? Oh, tasty. Hang on. Oh, stop.
Did he do everything?
He does now.
Perhaps you can teach an old dog new tricks. I thought we were going to have to get a new telly.
Oh, no, it's fine. I fixed him up with the 6 extra BBC channels. You can get them on cable, satellite, or I got in Freeview. Oh, around £50. No subscription. You get this box. I just plugged it in and he was away. 30 channels in all. Oi, sit.
Call 08700 10 10 10 or visit your local retailer or supplier.
Hospital can be a dangerous place.
I haven't got a clue. Don't know what I'm doing.
Roger makes mistakes again and again.
You're asking me to blow the whistle.
Where are my wife's records?
If Haley carries on the way he's going, she's going to be dead in the next 10 minutes.
Patients die.
Bodies. BBC Three's acclaimed drama comes to BBC Two, Wednesday at 9.
BBC 4 opens the Alan Clark Diaries.
There are no true friends in politics. We're all sharks circling and waiting for traces of blood to appear in the water.
Revealing his public life.
Deeply disliked by both civil servants and ministers.
And private life.
I never felt the same degree of sheer physical desire as I did for you.
Please don't spoil it now by suggesting we get a room.
Make your appointment with the Alan Clark Diaries. Over on BBC 4 now.
This is BBC Two and Newsnight now with Kirsty Walk.
Tonight, confusion over Yasser Arafat's fragile state. First, a statement of his death.
Mr. Arafat passed away a quarter of an hour ago.
But the French hospital treating him says he's alive.
Monsieur Arafat n'est pas décédé.
For the past 40 years, Yasser Arafat has defined the Palestinian cause. That era is over. Is this the moment the Middle East conflict moves to a different stage? I'll be speaking to the author of the Middle East Peace Plan, George Mitchell. 3 Black Watch soldiers and their interpreter are killed in Iraq. What will this mean for their mission? George Bush holds his first press conference as the new president, but who masterminded his victory? We profile the man Bush describes as the architect. And on the day Italy finally chooses its new EU commissioner, Rocco Bertoglioni, the man forced to withdraw from the nomination after saying homosexuality was a sin, gives his first interview to Newsnight. Good evening. Palestinian officials have today been putting plans in place to try to avoid unrest in the event of Yasser Arafat's death. At the moment, he is believed to be alive, though tonight in Paris his doctor said he was deteriorating. And although there were reports that the Palestinian leader was semi-conscious, others said he was in a coma. His condition has led to speculation not only about his successor, but also about where he could be buried, an issue of huge significance. Arafat wants to be laid to rest in Jerusalem, but Ariel Sharon may rule that out and insist on Gaza as the resting place for the man who has become a national symbol. Here's our diplomatic editor, Mark Urban.
It's not been the most dignified of days. Claim and counterclaim as Palestinian officials try to manage a peaceful transition of power. But that, unmistakably, is the name of the game. The heads of Palestinian security organizations and ministers met throughout the day in Ramallah. Ahmed Kurey, better known to Palestinians as Abu Allah, the Prime Minister, is now assuming some of the powers long denied him by his master.
President Arafat is undergoing continuous examination on his health. He is receiving excellent treatment from his French doctors.
After so many conflicting signals on Mr. Arafat's health today, it's the diplomatic vital signs that are the most interesting. Last night, Tony Blair made this call.
In particular, I have long argued that the need to revitalise the Middle East peace process is the single most pressing political challenge in our world today.
President Bush's spokesman responded by saying he saw an opportunity to move forward on the roadmap to peace. And why should the White House suddenly be talking in those terms when Mr. Bush has long written off the Palestinian leader as a peace partner? At today's presidential press conference, he seemed to regard Mr. Arafat as being off the scene.
My first reaction is God bless his soul. And my second reaction is that we will continue to work for a free Palestinian state that's at peace with Israel.
If Washington and London are shifting into post-Arafat diplomatic posture, some Israelis have gone even further today. When the roadmap was launched last year, they saw Abu Mazen, or Mahmoud Abbas, as a man they could do business with. The Israelis take heart from the fact that he seems to be sharing powers with his successor as PM, Abu Ala.
I think by Abu Mazen and Abu Ala coming together, it's a good pair. They are serious people, they are responsible people. They're not Israeli agents, they won't take orders from us, but they're basically for the end of terror. They're basically for a compromise in order to achieve peace, which I described, namely two states.
While Israeli reporting might be construed as wishful thinking, events at the hospital itself didn't clarify matters. The reports coming from his Paris bedside caused today's oddest moment.
Prime Minister, Mr. Arafat is in a very, very bad condition. How concerned are you that there now will be a political vacuum in the Palestinian
Mr. Arafat passed away a quarter of an hour ago.
That suggestion was promptly denied by the hospital, where the French president visited Mr. Arafat today. Mr. Chirac and the Palestinian authorities apparently determined to quash rumours while security preparations were made back in the West Bank and Gaza Strip.
3 novembre.
The state of health of the patient needed treatment that required his transfer on Wednesday, 3rd of November in the afternoon in a department adapted to his illness. Thank you for your attention.
Monsieur Arafat n'est pas décédé.
Mr. Arafat is not dead.
Je vous remercie.
Palestinian pride will be smarting as they watch the Americans and Israelis in particular suggest that Mr. Arafat's death will allow another serious round of peacemaking to go ahead. But in truth, as long as the White House and the Israelis found him unacceptable, rightly or wrongly, there was deadlock. With Mr. Arafat off the scene, the real issue is whether a new leadership can credibly speak for the Palestinian people. If they can, then there's little doubt that peace negotiations can resume, and indeed some Palestinians now also say they expect it.
It has to be more than hope. It has to be deeds this time. It has to be action on the ground. It has to be things done on the ground. It has to be reviving the negotiations between Palestinians and Israelis, reviving the role of the quartet, reviving the roadmap. And I would really urge also the president to name an envoy, a special envoy, to the Middle East peace process.
Arafat supporters tonight staged a show of strength in Gaza. The leadership in Ramallah will be most worried about the possibility of factional fighting here. And this turnout, a few hundred, is hardly reassuring. It's in Gaza that the new leadership will face its toughest test, and where the first indications will come as to whether the new era presents new opportunities.
Mark Urban. Well, I'm joined now by James Reynolds, who's outside Arafat's compound in Ramallah. James, now, what's the activity like around the compound in the past few hours?
there's been lots of toing and froing, lots of comings and goings, plenty of security vehicles in there and lots of meetings, cars still coming and going from that compound. I think there is a concerted effort here to try to show that there is no vacuum and that there is no chaos, that Palestinian officials, in the absence of their leader, are reliable caretakers and are able to mind the shop.
Tell me, though, what are the security worries? Because you heard Mark Urban saying there are considerable concerns, particularly among factions in Gaza.
Yeah, the problem may come down to this. If Yasser Arafat does die and a leadership takes over here in this compound behind me, will they have any say about what goes on in Gaza? I've often asked ordinary Palestinians, be they in Gaza or other places, what they think of people like Mahmoud Abbas and Ahmed Kureya, the former and current prime ministers, and they've said to me very often, they're not leaders, they are nothing. So I think it'll be a great challenge for those men of the old guard, Yasser Arafat's lieutenants, to see if they can become generals, to see if they can command any sort of allegiance outside this very narrow area of Yasser Arafat's compound.
But what about the physical ability of the Palestinians to police themselves through any unrest in the days that might follow? Without Israeli heavy-handedness.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting. And I think what will be very interesting to see is whether there is any Israeli-Palestinian coordination in the next few days and weeks if the situation of Yasser Arafat's health gets worse. Clearly, we already know that Israeli forces are on high alert. They don't want any sort of battle. There may be a problem if Yasser Arafat dies and his supporters insist on his being buried in Jerusalem and Israel dictates a different burial place. We shall have to wait and see.
James Reynolds, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's speak now to Afi Safia, who is the Palestinian representative in London, and in a moment, Senator George Mitchell, who is in our New York studio. First of all, Afi Safia, it has been an extraordinary, confused day. Is it fair to say that Yasser Arafat is being kept alive?
I believe he is in critical condition, but he is not clinically dead. He's fighting for his life, and I hope he'll pull through. I spoke some 2 hours ago with his chef de cabinet in the hospital, and he confirmed to me what I was just saying to you. I believe Arafat is a fighter, and he's a survivor. You remember 92 when his plane crashed? Miraculously, he survived. And I think it's in the interest of the Palestinian people and the peace process that Arafat is still there. Yet I would like to say that Arafat is an individual, an institution, the PLO-PNA, and an idea. If individuals are perishables, ideas are immortal.
But he's also a clever man, and perhaps it's not inconceivable that he himself would say, look, I know the state of medicine. Make sure that things are in place, that there is the unlikely, that unrest would be unlikely. Get all that in place before, as it were, I'm allowed to go.
Let me tell you, I think it would be from me indecent to speak of the eventuality of Arafat's death. He's alive, I wish him alive, and I believe that we still need him. Yet what I would like to say is the following. There are some hypotheses being floated today in the media that his demise might be favorable to the peace process. I personally believe that the peace process is on the verge of being resurrected, and Arafat is extremely favorable for the resurrection of the peace process. I met him on the 20th of October in Ramallah. I was one of the last visitors who had a 25-minute discussion with Arafat where he questioned me with great enthusiasm about how I saw the post-2 November, what I thought were the inclinations and the attitude of Tony Blair, who had promised my personal priority would be the peace process. And Arafat, with precise questions, asked me about trends in Europe. And I believe the peace process is on the verge of being revitalized for objective factors that are converging. One, it's the exasperation of the international community and Europe with President Bush, who has self-inflicted impotence on American diplomacy for 4 years. Yet today he has renewed legitimacy. His legitimacy was questionable 4 years ago. He was vulnerable. Today his legitimacy is reinforced. The pro-Israeli lobby didn't give him additional votes. He had only 22% of the Jewish community, and now he has secured his place in the White House for the second mandate. We can offer him to secure his place in history.
That is the bigger picture.
That's
but coming back to the problems that James Reynolds was talking about, in the event that there has to be a successor or a group of successors, how do you keep everybody under control in order to let that bigger picture unfold?
Let me tell you, Palestinian society and institutions during his absence from Ramallah functioned extremely smoothly. I was in Palestine to test the pulse of Palestinian society. Public opinion wants our politicians and our political parties to show maturity in this moment of difficulty. And I believe everything so far has operated smoothly. I don't expect unrest, especially if there are no heavy-handed Israeli policies.
Afif Safia, thank you very much indeed. And now we can speak to George Mitchell, who is in New York, and he was President Clinton's special envoy to the Middle East and the author of the Middle East Peace Plan, otherwise known as the Roadmap. First of all, George Mitchell, just a quick thumbnail sketch of some of your encounters with Yasser Arafat. What sort of man was he to deal with?
Well, I had many encounters with him, many meetings, long evening dinners. He was obviously always determined to act in behalf of his own people, those he felt that he represented, indeed personified, and his entire career has been dedicated to that objective. I did not engage in negotiations with him. That's important to understand. I was asked to produce a report on the violence, and I had separate meetings with Mr. Arafat and also with the prime ministers of Israel, first Prime Minister Barak and then Prime Minister Sharon, and then numerous officials in both of their governments and a lot of ordinary citizens.
So what do you, in terms of what you saw and the impact of his presence, as Afif was saying, as an idea, a person, and as it were, a movement, what impact do you think it will have in both the West Bank and Gaza if indeed this era is over?
It will have a tremendous impact. It's obviously going to be over at some point. It appears likely to be soon based on the medical reports that have been coming out of Paris. But it will be a very emotional and important time for the Palestinian people. There's no reason, however, why they can't have an orderly transition of power. They know the importance, the opportunity that will present itself, as the previous speaker indicated. There at least some small signs that this process can be revived. The confluence of the re-election of President Bush and the opportunity for a new American initiative and a transition of leadership on the Palestinian side may create an opportunity that would be very beneficial.
The problem is we've had opportunities before in different ways. Are you genuinely convinced that that there will not be unrest?
Of course, it's impossible to know that, and no one can be genuinely convinced one way or the other, but I don't think we should begin with the premise that there has to be unrest or there's going to be.
Right.
The Palestinians are intelligent people and they can conduct their affairs intelligently.
Well, let's move on now to talk about the roadmap and some. Have things moved on from that? For example, has Sharon's wall, which the International Court has said must be removed, has that essentially moved the peace plan on? Does it have to change now?
Well, of course, any plan must take account changing circumstances. That's true in the Middle East, as it was true in Northern Ireland, as it's true in any conflict in the world. You can't adopt a plan and then say we're going to stick with this forever. No matter what changes occur, you have to take into account changes in circumstances. But the fundamentals remain the same, that it will be in the interests of both peoples to engage in a process that will bring this long conflict to an end, and I believe that is possible.
Now, we've also heard from Afif Safia that there is a possibility of a kind of reinvigorated engagement, not only in America but here too. And there is talk of an international conference here in London. Is it likely that people of your stature and your involvement in the past could be re-engaged in this whole process?
Well, that's a decision to be made by others, not by me, but I hope there is a re-involvement of all who are concerned. First and foremost, of course, the United States government, but also the UK, the European Union, and others who are interested. And I think by the parties themselves. That, of course, is the critical factor, the role of the parties themselves. But what I detect there is a growing awareness on both sides that the current policies, what they've been doing, simply aren't working. The Israelis want security.
Will George
Bush, the Palestinians want a state.
Do you think George Bush will now, in the start of this second term, be the man to take this forward? Do you think he really has the will?
I don't know for certain, but I hope he does, and I can say this, that's not likely to happen if the United States president doesn't take a strong personal interest and initiative. I think that's essential to the process, and I hope very much that he does.
George Mitchell, Hafiz, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
There was an inevitability about the news today that 3 soldiers of the Black Watch and their Iraqi interpreter had been killed in an ambush outside Baghdad. In a statement to the Commons this evening, the junior Defence Minister Adam Ingram said other soldiers had been wounded in the attack but could give few details. It is just 10 days since the Black Watch were redeployed from their southern base in Basra, ostensibly to free up US forces for the expected assault on Fallujah. These fatalities will only increase the disquiet over Tony Blair's decision to extend the Black Watch's tour of duty by a month. Here's Robin Denslow.
This was only the second day on which the Black Watch have been fully operational after their move to Camp Dogwood south of Baghdad. And tonight, news that the regiment, their families and the government surely feared most. 3 British soldiers, along with 1 Iraqi, have been killed.
The latest information I have is that in addition to the 3 soldiers and the civilian translator, who have tragically lost their lives, 8 other soldiers have been injured. The incident occurred around 1 o'clock Iraqi time this afternoon, when soldiers manning a vehicle checkpoint were targeted by a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, a suicide attack, followed shortly afterwards by mortar fire.
The suicide attack was the first on British forces in Iraq and follows a series of attacks on the Black Watch since they took over from the Americans at this base in the Sunni Triangle. Even yesterday, day 1, there were problems, with a Warrior armoured vehicle disabled by a roadside bomb and a second Warrior driven off the road in a mortar attack. The soldiers have been handing out leaflets, stressing that they're from Scotland and want peace and cooperation with local people. They'd sent supplies to local schools even before they arrived. But they knew this is a key area for insurgents, close to both Baghdad and Fallujah. They have already expanded their mission across to the eastern side of the Euphrates River, from where their base has come under rocket attack. So, with an American-led assault on Fallujah expected within weeks, if not days, what is the role for the Black Watch?
The role of the Black Watch is not entirely passive. When the Fallujah operation begins, which it will very soon now, I think, the Black Watch, in a sense, is the anvil to various hammers. It's one of the anvils. So it's there to prevent supplies going backwards and forwards into Fallujah, and also to intercept insurgents who might be trying to come southwards.
5 more minutes! Come on! Come on, pick it up!
The Black Watch were promised they'd be home by Christmas and would spend just 30 days at Dogwood, meaning there's 28 days to go. Already the mission is causing concern to some relatives.
I'm kind of worried because, like I said, my young lad's there again, and he's up the front and it's the Warriors. And like we said, we've just heard that there's 2 of the Warriors being attacked. Well, you can imagine how I feel and imagine how his wife and that feels, and the rest of the families.
While in the Commons today, sympathy from the opposition.
Her Majesty's loyal opposition extends its deepest condolences to the families of the 3 soldiers of the Black Watch who have this day given their lives in action, and also to the families of those who have been involved. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the whole country will want to wish the Black Watch well as they continue to carry out their duties.
There are 850 men in the Black Watch battle group, and they already know that they faced a very different challenge here to that back in the Shira areas around Basra. They've already had to expand their area of operation across the river. So is this an adequate number?
A battalion battle group, which is what they are sufficient to hold this area and conduct active patrols at the level of violence that I think they realistically expect. But if the Fallujah operation goes wrong, and we don't know if it will or not, but if it does, then it's entirely possible that they might need to reinforce this battle group, and they may need to get some heavy armour up there. They've said not so far, but they don't have any Challenger tanks. They say there is no requirement. There may come to be a requirement if the battle group